This is Letter from America. Today's topic is message from Mako Haruziwishe. We must vote. We must not let the devil, Scaffman, escape with the Bible in front of the congregation. A very inspiring interview was given by Makomborero Haruziwishe this week. Haruziwishe was granted bail last week after spending more than 10 months in jail for being a human rights activist. He has been interviewed on other media, and his message to the Zimbabweans is very altruistic and a clear indication of one of the dynamic and emerging leaders for the youthful Zimbabwean nation. What was particularly striking were his philosophical remarks, which emotionally resonated with the masses, not only in the country but also among the diaspora. In one interview, he was asked whether MDC Alliance should boycott the elections if there are no electoral reforms. His answer was, "We must register to vote. We must vote. we must not let the devil escape with the Bible in front of a congregation. His message to Zimbabweans was very clear. Let us all register to vote. Let us vote, and let us protect our vote. He said he was aware that plans were well advanced to rig the elections. But he added, by mass participation in the elections, we will set the bar for rigging even higher than ever before. Mako said he felt humbled and empowered by the widespread support he received from around the world under hashtag Free Mako and hashtag Mako Monday movements. His case had also been raised in the British House of Commons debate on human rights and abuses in Zimbabwe. Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF were feeling the international pressure to release Mako. Mako's experience at the loss of his human rights was far more than the 10 months he spent in jail. He had been harassed, arrested, charged for being a human rights activist for more than 10 years, right from the days he was at the university. And yet, despite this constant harassment, Mako stands resolute to carry and determined to carry on the struggle for human rights and democracy right up to its logical conclusion. If the Mnangagwa regime had jailed Mako in order to frighten him into giving up his human rights activism, Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF were in for a shock. Mako says he stands determined to go on in this campaign against the dictatorship in Zimbabwe. Psychologists say it is human nature for society to be sympathetic to the victims of criminal abuse. In the case of Zimbabwe, the MDC alliance led by Advocate Chamisa has endured unprecedented criminal human rights abuse from Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF. Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF's strategy is to prevent MDC alliance from participating in both by-elections in March and national elections in 2023. Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF, like the biblical Goliath, are wielding all the captured state resources to deal what they hope will be a decisive blow and unconstitutionally wipe out the MDC alliance. Unconstitutionally here means Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF have trashed the Constitution of 2013 and violated with impunity the SADC guidelines for conducting free and fair elections. Both the by-elections and the national elections will be conducted according to Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF way, or simply rigging them. In terms of resources, MDC is no match for ZANU-PF. MDC Alliance has no offices, has no money, and are losing the name to a Mnangagwa puppet and surrogate Monzora. And like the biblical David, in an uneven match with Goliath, all MDC Alliance has to contest the elections with is a handmade sling. But that sling represents the millions of Zimbabweans who have rallied behind the MDC alliance. There are two major causes for the continuing popularity of the MDC alliance among the Zimbabweans, or maybe three. First, and in no particular order, is Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF have destroyed Zimbabwe. Zimbabweans are bearing the brunt of this destruction of their country, and they know who is responsible. It might sound like an oxymoron to hear some Zimbabweans say Ian Smith's Rhodesia was better than the way Mugabe, Mnangagwa, ZANU-PF ruled Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe's infrastructure is, for lack of a better word, in shambles as far as serving the majority of the 17 million Zimbabweans is concerned. MDC Alliance Vice President Tendai Biti exposed government mismanagement of the economy in his detailed analysis of the 2022 budget. In a recent interview, Biti said the national budget, amounting to 927 billion Zimbabwean dollars, was technically unsound and dishonest. Using the exchange rate of 105 Zimbabwean dollars to $1 US, this budget amounted to 8.9 billion United States dollars. Biti said the budget relied for its revenue on Zimbabwean taxpayers. In fact, 96% of the Zimbabwean budget for 2022 is expected to come from the taxpayers. He said this is way beyond the Zimbabweans' ability to pay. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, in other African countries, revenue from taxpayers is 16%. Zimbabweans are the most taxed citizens in sub-Saharan Africa. 90% of Zimbabweans are unemployed and rely on the informal sector as vendors. According to the World Bank, 50 to 70% of the Zimbabweans are living in extreme poverty. 70% of Zimbabweans use bush toilet, and 70% of the Zimbabweans have no electricity. More than 40 years under Mugabe Mnangagwa ZANU-PF rule, only 10% of the roads in Zimbabwe are refurbished. Of the 100,000 kilometers or 62,000 miles of roads in Zimbabwe, less than 10% are tarred. Most of this tarmac was done during the Ian Smith Rhodesia era. The World Health Organization recently declared Zimbabwe to have the worst road accidents in sub-Saharan Africa. 70% of Zimbabweans have no electricity. Biti said the 2021 budget, that is last year's budget, of 500 billion Zimbabwean dollars turned out to be wishful thinking. By September of last year, 9 months into the year, the government had collected 300 billion Zimbabwean dollars out of a budget of 500 billion Zimbabwean dollars. Only 30% of the allocated budgets were disbursed to key ministries of education, health, and environment. What this means is the amounts allocated to these key ministries, education, health, and environment, were not all disbursed. Only 30% of them were disbursed by September last year. Civil servants used to earn $550 US, but they now earn less than $35 US. Teachers are the hardest hit, and 40 to 50% of the teachers have not gone to teach in the past 2 years because they have to look for ways of raising income, like vending or being vendors. When the teachers tried to use their democratic and constitutional right to protest, they were summarily arrested, humiliated, and forced to sit on the floor. 16 teachers spent a number of days languishing in jail. Their crime was simply they tried to exercise their basic human rights. In a remarkable contrast, the Ministry of Finance, Office of the President, Defense, and Home Affairs got more than they had been allocated. Why? Well, because these are the ministries that control the taxpayers' money, the finance ministry, that is. The Office of the President, Defense, and Home Affairs are essential instruments of oppressing citizens through the CIO, the army, and the police. It's these security agencies that keep Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF in power, not the citizens' vote. Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF do not rely on the voters to stay in power. They rely on the instruments of oppression through the CIO, the army, and the police. BT rubbished the bombastic claim by Finance Minister Mthuli Ncube that Zimbabwe had a surplus in its accounts and that Zimbabwe had started repaying its debts. BT said Zimbabwe had internal and external debts that amount to about 22 billion US dollars. The finance minister boasted he had paid a laughable 44 million US dollars. What is increasingly becoming obvious is that Zimbabwe's debts are unsustainable. Zimbabwe has no capacity to pay its debts. This is what unleashed the sanctions against Mugabe, Mnangagwa, and ZANU-PF. According to BT, every newborn Zimbabwean child owes $300,000 towards the Zimbabwean debt. To add to this unsustainable debt, corruption is now rampant and widespread in the Sodom and Gomorrah world of Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF. Since 2014, the Mnangagwa regime has failed to account for $15 billion US dollars. Every year, $2 billion US dollars of Zimbabweans taxpayers' money is not accounted for because of corruption. Every year, Zimbabwe's Auditor General, Mildred Chiri, has exposed serious mismanagement, rampant looting of taxpayers' money by Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF. The recent cases involved COVID-19 public funds, where millions of US dollars cannot be accounted for. They have just disappeared. Mrs. Chiri was recently cited by the World Bank as a substantially independent auditor. In return, Zimbabwe's Vice President Chiwengwa said he wanted the powers of the Auditor General to be reduced in what many observers believe are efforts to undermine the influence of the Auditor General. Mildred Chiri, who has been relentless in her exposition of rampant mismanagement and abuse of public funds, especially through obscure and corrupt procurement process, has received many death threats. Now, on the second issue, by way of a reminder, at the beginning of this letter from America, I said that despite the David and Goliath resource relationship between the MDC Alliance and ZANU-PF, the Zimbabwean masses are turning to the MDC Alliance, are turning to support the MDC Alliance. This was amply demonstrated in heavy turnouts at Chamisa's rallies, even in rural areas that were said to be ZANU-PF strongholds. Two key reasons why Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF are so unpopular are, as I just said, the mismanagement of the economy and the endemic corruption, which I talked about earlier. The second key reason is Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF violation of human rights and violence against political opponents. On this second issue, Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF are acting like unrepentant bullies in the way they are trampling on basic human rights and its tradition of inflicting violence. At every election period, Mugabe and now Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF have turned into monsters of violence, harassing, abducting, torturing, killing, and raping civilians on the pretext that they do not support ZANU-PF. Significant human rights issues have included unlawful or arbitrary killings of civilians by security forces, torture and arbitrary detention by security forces, cases of cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment, harsh and life-threatening prison conditions, political prisoners or detainees, arbitrary arrests, and so forth. One outstanding human rights activist, the late Tonderai Ndira, was brutally murdered by ZANU-PF militia thugs in what was undoubtedly politically motivated violence during the 2008 elections. In one of his memorable speeches, Ndira said, "It is clear that the change we are waiting for is here. If we do not get it, the people must rise up and fight for their victory." Then on Tuesday, May 13, 2008, at 6:45 in the morning, 10 heavily armed ZANU-PF thugs drove to Ndira's home and dragged him into their pickup truck. Ndira's final words to his wife were, "They are going to kill me." And they did, in a very cruel manner. Ndira's remains were identified by his relatives and MDC party officials. His body was badly decomposed. A pair of bloody shots was plastered to a face that was clearly broken and shattered. His jaw was shattered. His knuckles were broken. A bullet hole below his heart. Many stab wounds. And a large hole at the back of his head, which seemed to have been caused by a hammer. That was how MDC activist Tonderai Ndira died. The Gukura Hundi massacres of more than 20,000 innocent civilians, barely 3 years into Zimbabwe's independence, simply meant that many Zimbabweans never got to benefit from independence. And Mugabe and ZANU those days were always singing ZANU Ndeyeropa, or Through Blood. ZANU apologists interpreted this as Zimbabwe's independence was won through sacrifice by ZANU freedom fighters. However, for the innocent Zimbabwean victims of ZANU tyranny, this really meant that ZANU-PF is a party of violence. This interpretation is a lot more accurate because that is what ZANU-PF has become. The combination of mismanagement of the economy, corruption, violence, and trampling on basic human rights, and especially all the efforts to block the MDC alliance from participating in the elections, is bringing more support for the beleaguered MDC alliance. And ZANU-PF is losing public support. Hundreds of thousands of ZANU-PF membership cards are gathering spiders' webs in some abandoned warehouse. No one is interested in buying ZANU-PF cards. No one is interested in becoming a party member of ZANU-PF. Some of the party insiders are now saying loudly, ZANU-PF, Chinu ichi chawora. ZANU-PF is rotten. And the David and Goliath equation is apocalyptically fulfilled. That is how David prevailed over Goliath, and that is how today's David will prevail over Goliath. Why? Because he has the Zimbabwean millions behind him.
This concludes today's broadcast of Letter from America, a weekly in-depth analysis of the situation in Zimbabwe. Thank you for listening.
A blessed Thursday to you all, our viewers and listeners, joining us from across the globe on today's episode of Letter from America. And our topic for today is Message from Mako. We must vote. We must not let the devil escape with the Bible in front of the congregation. Personally, I have not quite understood the metaphor that Mako used there, that we must not let the devil escape with the Bible in front of the congregation. If there is anyone who can explain this metaphor for us all so that we all understand exactly what Mako is saying, what we need to do. I'm just going to paste a comment with the link to enter this live stream and give your explanation what you think this statement which Mako made really means. We must not let the devil escape with the Bible in front of the congregation. It's good every now and again to remind each other of the situation in Zimbabwe and how we got there, which is exactly what today's episode of Letter from America has done for me. Just listening to all the atrocities that ZANU-PF has carried out, the corruption, the manipulation of our legal system, the trampling of human rights, the underpayment of civil servants, the huge debt that they have created for us and for our future generations, debts which have been made so that they can line their pockets. It's their debts which have been made not to develop our country, but the money which was borrowed was all looted, and their individual families are sitting on that wealth, whilst the average Zimbabwean is wallowing in poverty and still has to pay this debt which ZANU-PF has made. And it will take decades for us to clear that debt. So it is really heartbreaking to look back and reflect on all this and try to understand, how did we get here? How did we allow this to happen? If we look at South Africa, the South Africans react to the smallest mistake made by government. They go out in their numbers, they protest, and their voice is heard. But how did we allow them to get to the point where they can arrest innocent people like Mako and nothing happens. There's no revolt. People like Tondera Indira were so mercilessly killed for making a statement which was true anyway. But there's no reaction from us, the Zimbabwean people. They make laws to rob us, like the $1 is equal to one Zimbabwean dollar, something that we all know is not true. But they got away with it, and there was no reaction from us. Don't we realize that we are enabling, we have enabled all of this to happen by not doing anything to stop it when it was still starting? We allowed them to sink their roots and gain control of all the key ministries and industries. But fortunately, 2023 is, I believe, our last window, our last opportunity to do something about ZANU PF, to do something about all these things that have led to the destruction of our country. And as Mako said, we must vote. We must register to vote, and we must vote. And above all, we must be prepared to defend our vote when the day comes, because ZANU PF is not just going to accept the results without trying to rig. We must try and reproduce what they did in Zambia. We vote in our numbers and we stay to defend our vote. Make sure we do not leave to go home until the results have been announced. And if the results announced are of rigged, if they are rigged, then we must still stay on the streets and demand that justice be done. Because I hate to think of what Zimbabwe is going to be like come 2024 if ZANU PF is still in power. I would like to share a picture that I saw in a WhatsApp group somewhere, where someone got a ticket, a parking ticket, and the fine for that ticket was 229 Zimbabwean dollars. Sorry, 229 US dollars. And I don't understand how such a thing can happen. I don't know if you can see the figures there. The picture is not so clear. But the sum of this fine for the ticket is 229 Zimbabwean dollars. How is it possible in an economy like the one we have in Zimbabwe, for a ticket fine to get to 229 US dollars. In Western countries, if a ticket is 70 US dollars, 80 US dollars, it's quite a lot already. Where people's salaries are much higher, but still such a fine is it's still high. But considering the salaries that people are getting in Zimbabwe, how can a ticket fine be 229 Zimbabwean dollars? And why are we allowing these people to get away with doing this? What can we do? Let's talk Zimbabweans. What can we do to make sure that come 2023, we remove ZANU and give our nation a chance to revive and rebuild? What else can we do in addition to voting and defending our vote? What can we do to make sure that our right to vote and to vote freely in 2023 is respected? Is it enough for us to just wait for 2023 and then go to vote? Is that enough? What do you think? I have posted the link to join the live stream in comments. If anybody would like to come and talk live, all you need to do is just click on that link and it would direct you to our StreamYard platform. We have a comment here by Geraldine Wambe, who said, Comrade Ndira died a painful death. These people cannot remain in power. I totally agree, my sister. It was so unnecessary for him to experience all that excruciating pain and to experience such a cruel death just for saying what everybody knew to be true. We cannot allow these murderers, these cruel, heartless criminals to stay in power. Because if we do, it is at our own expense. They are not going to reform. They are not going to change their ways. Instead, ZANU-PF is hardening. They're getting bolder and bolder in their terror tactics, in their corruption. They're not trying to hide it anymore. We cannot allow them to stay in power. We must unite. We must come together. Cuthbert Mudimu says, more needs to be done before elections. We will be disappointed again. Thank you, my brother Cuthbert Mudimu. I totally agree. I feel it's not enough for us to wait to vote. We must do something to create that environment that will allow us, first of all, to be able to vote freely without fear of being terrorized. ZANU-PF will not hand that to us on a platter. Trust me, they will do everything in their power to try and make sure that they trample all over our right to elect the leader of our choice. But we cannot sit or roll on our backs and let them get away with it. We can't afford to do that anymore. Nyika yatova mamvemve kare. We can't afford to let things get worse than they are right now. We have to do something. And the first most important thing we need to do is to unite. Because there is power in numbers. It's easy for ZANU-PF to target one person who is brave enough to stand up and tell the truth. But if we are all standing up and saying the same thing at the same time, who will they target? My encouragement to you all is, let's register to vote and prepare to vote and to defend our vote when the time comes. But before we get there, let's think, let's brainstorm what can we do to make sure that we succeed this coming 2023, because we really cannot afford to have ZANU-PF in power after the elections. It's just going to be hell in Zimbabwe. Once they know they can keep doing this and there is nothing we, the people, can do about it, life is just going to keep getting worse. I'm going to play a short clip at the end of which are the voter registration points. So please do watch to the end so that you can hear where your nearest voter registration center is, or if you are not in Zimbabwe, but you can hear where your relatives who are on the ground, where their nearest voter registration center is, and you can help them, direct them where they need to go to register to vote. But before I play the clip, I would just like to thank you all for joining us on today's episode of Letter from America. And I would like to encourage you not to lose heart. Have faith. Muchishona tinoti chisingapere chinoshura. ZANU-PF cannot continue to terrorize Zimbabweans forever. Zvinototi zvipere chete. And 2023 is that time that God has set for us to remove ZANU-PF. Saka taakuda kunosvika, ngatirege kuneta, taakunosvika. Joseph Mudenda says, it's high time as responsible citizens to bury our fear and face the terrorist organization ZANU. Yes, exactly. People are frozen in fear because of the terror that they have been subjected to. But unfortunately, with bullies like ZANU-PF feed off fear. The more you fear, the more resolute they are to terrorize you. Bullies cannot stand when you stand up to them. They always target the one who will not stand and defend themselves. Kubvira tiri kuchikoro taizviona, kune vanhu vaiitwa bully every day. And the reason why they were targeted was simple, because they did not fight back. They rewarded the bully by giving them what they wanted. Munhu akakurova nhasi akati ndipe mari yako, ukamupa, mangwana kana akuda mari futi anoziva kuti uyu ndikangomurova anondipa uyu, haakusiye. Asi kana kukaita mumwe ane nharo wekuti akamuti nhasi ndipe mari yako oramba, akada kumurova vorwisana, mangwana anofunga twice. In fact, anotoona kuti ichi chinondirova futi chinodzosera, rega nditagete uyu asingadzosere uyu. Ndozvatiri kuitwa izvozvo vanhu veZimbabwe. We are being targeted because hatidzorere. We allow them to get away with it time and time again. We teach them kuti kana muchida kuti tiite zvamuri kuda tirovei, terrorize us. Just by not fighting back, by rewarding them with what they want when they terrorize us, we teach them kuti this is how you get what you want from us. Ku South Africa, they teach them kuti that's not how you get what you want from us, because we fight back, and the politicians know that. Saka havatombozviedza zvakawanda zvatinoitirwa isusu kuZimbabwe. Hakuna politician angambozviedza kuSouth Africa, vanotozviziva kuti inotomuka hondo. So it is time, yes, as Joshua Mudenda said, to bury our fears and face this terrorist organization. Because waraiti kana kuri kutya kufa, how many people have died in the last few years? Because kuma hospital hakuna mshonga, hakuna equipment, kana manesi nemadoctor apera kubuda munyika. Many more people have died. Nema potholes are in my roads. Yes, tinogona kuevada kufa kwekufurwa tichirwira marights edu, but you never know. Mangwana acho chaiwo unogona kombi yauri inogona kurovera papothole, unogona kurwara ugotadza kusvika kuhospital because hapana transportation yekukusvitsa kuhospital. Kana kuti ugokusvika kuhospital kwacho woudzwa kunzi hakuna kana space futi kwakazara. Kana kuti ugomupinda muhospital macho ugofa urimo imomo because hapana chavanokwanisa kukuitira. Kusiri kufa ndekupi, but tinofa takawanda. Many more die from not taking action. Pane vanouraiwa if we do stand up and fight for our rights. And ndo zvimwe zvinoita kuti international community itadze kana kutibatsira, nekuti mutemo unoti isisu ndisu tinofanira kudecide zvatinoda kuti zviitike munyika yedu. But kana isusu vacho tisingazviratidze, tisingataure kuti izvi ndo zvatiri kuda, hapana munhu anokwanisa kubva outside agouya agotitaurira isisu isi takanyarara. Anotoudzwa neZANU-PF kuti you don't have that right, who are you? So we are the ones who have to initiate this thing international community kange yaona kuti isisu hatisi kuda ZANU-PF, we demonstrated in no and clear terms, then it becomes a bit easier for the international community to come and say, aiwaka, tarisai, varidzi venyika havasi kukudai, isisu ndisu varidzi venyika vacho, but hatisi kutaura, tinoramba takanyarara. Saka it's not easy for anyone from outside to come and defend us. Shanzi na Anna Musananguro Mubaiwa. Hello, my sister Anna. How are you? Hanzi, ZANU-PF is a cult. Hakuna urumende yakadai. Ndiso sochaizo. Mugatarisa, a lot of the things that they are focusing their efforts on. Azvisi zvekuvaka nyika. Azvisi zvinoitwa nemunhu ari kurana nyika. Zviri very indicative of a cult. Zvekutanga kuti mukore uno ndopa vanoda kuisa statue yambuya nehanda mutown. Pane kugadzira marodzi, kuipa mahospitals, kubhadhara mateachers nemanurses, ndo zvavanosarudza kushandisira mari izvozvo. Why? Zvinobva kupi? Haisi nganga yakavaningirikina here kuti kana muchida ku-retain power, itai so. It's a cult. Nevamwe vanogara vakapfeka masikafu kupise sei. Munhu angaende kuDubai sure. Ku Middle East kune plus 40 degrees Celsius. Agotadza kubvisa scarf. But anyway, we were just closing off, and I was saying I'm just going to play this short clip. At the end of this clip, you can hear the voter registration centers for the different provinces. So with that, I would just like to wish you all a blessed week and to encourage us all to keep thinking and trying to strategize, to figure out what we can do. Let us do everything in our power to make sure kuti 2023 ZANU irikuva. Once again, thank you for joining us. Bye bye.
Register kuvota ande kunovota hatiti vanozokopota kutuka vamwe vasina kuvota. Register kuvota ande kunovota hatiti vanozokopota kutuka vamwe vasina kuvota. For presidency nechitupa changu ndeta check ndapinda tonazi monazi ndoda kunyorejesa masalazi mageto yuti yakametesa vemushikashika pamusika varikutengesa kuti kugokwanisa kuvota paunoda manya kuzekiwo rejesa kuvota. Rejesa kuvota ande kunovota hatiti vanozokopota kutuka vamwe vasina kuvota. Register kuvota.
Register to vote and stand with other citizens in voting to be the change our country needs. Stand in solidarity with others to bring dignity into the lives of all Zimbabweans. Here is the list of the ZEC provincial officers. Please phone for free on 08080219 for more information. In Bulawayo Metropolitan Province, the offices are located at number 16 Centenary Court, Windsor Park Building, 16th Avenue in Famona, Bulawayo. Harare Metropolitan is at 95 Jason Moyo Avenue, 4th floor Cecil House in Harare. In Manicaland, they can be found at 1st floor, New Government Complex, corner Robert Mugabe and 4th Street in Mutare. In Mashonaland Central, they are located at 2nd floor, Mutunga Gore Building in Bindura. In Mashonaland East, they are located at number 2, 5th Street, Marondera. In Mashonaland West, the address is 78 Robson Manika Drive in Chinoi. Mashingo can be found at number 10, Hellet Street in Mashingo. And for Midlands, the address is 10th Street, ground floor Government Complex in Gweru. Matabeleland North can be found at 16th Centenary Court, Windsor Park Building, 16th Avenue in Famona, Bulawayo. And Matabeleland South is located at 1194 Big Ben Road, Jahunda in Gwanda. Your vote counts.